Hello, friends. The situation at the front as of June 25th. Let's start with the Kharkiv border area. Both from the Lipsovsky and Bolchansky directions. They report on the continuation on the Lipsovsky direction. Fights near the Globus area. Meanwhile, information is already coming from the enemy that they are seriously pressing in the SU and not giving the Russian troops a chance move forward accordingly. We've already said that they switched to defense, so it's not surprising. I would say this was just a general comment on the situation from the Russian side. Nothing new. The fighting near Golubuk continues. Meanwhile, from the Russian side, as we have already mentioned, the air bomb strikes are intensifying, including FAB 3000, through Lipsy and Lipsy area. In general, there have already been several arrivals in Abkhazia 3000, which were filmed by Russian drones. But overall, we note that they are ongoing. The strikes, however, do not significantly affect the situation as of today. Air raids failed. All Russian troops are on the defense in the Lipetsk direction. There were also reports today from both our side and the Russian side about a hit on an ammunition depot in the territory of the Russian Federation. So, we note that the number of arrivals is increasing now. In general, there were reports overnight of strikes on the Belgorod region, on Kursk, the Russian sector of Antarctica. Belgorod and Kursk regions, we note that the overall number of strikes is increasing in the border areas with the Kharkov and Sumy regions from the side, the countries of the defense forces. No significant changes were observed on the western flank of the Volchansk direction. According to footage published by Ukrainian armed forces soldiers, this is the Staritsa section, its central part. But this is all within the already yellow zone footage. Was published that is present in SU, confirmed by at least 3 videos. That's why the fighting in this region continues. Regarding Volchansk itself, we previously added the gray zone twice. Today, we are not adding anything, just stating the situation. There was an attempt by the Russian side to break through along Pushkin Street to the factory, Volkansky Aggregate plant, and actually the ruins of the building that remain at the main entrance exactly. Along Pushkin Street, along Sobanaya Street, standing. They were hit by fire, therefore the situation remains unchanged. Although previously, as you remember, there were comments from the Russian side that they managed to take this block. I told you yesterday that there is no truth to the attempts being reported, but there's simply nothing to cling to, because the ruins are in too open an area. And naturally, this section is very well tracked, so no changes. The situation is complicated in the sense that, naturally, they go through the park. They are moving some troops, but these are not large forces to the enterprise itself, but between those positions that they control. So, in the western part, the enterprise itself remains a gray zone, without control from either side. Hostilities continue. Let's move on to the Seversk direction. Rozdolivka. Intense combat operations continue. Very high. High-intensity combat operations continue in the area in general.
I would say
clarification more. And the gray zone in the very distributary. Remember the backstory. Let's do a quick review. Along the railway, there were attacks. Then we managed to stop. We added gray and red zones. There were attempts to strike from the east. There were DRG intrusions on the 2nd Street. And as of today, most of the 2nd Street has gone into the gray zone. The Lesbos Strait. So the enemy is currently conducting assault operations. Makes sense. Initially, these were DRG incursions. Later, assault groups followed. And accordingly,
the figure is being adjusted.
And Rezon doesn't want it to say it too. As the main fighting is already beyond the ravine, positive, whether they will manage to secure themselves in the very distributary, time will tell. No, I won't give any forecasts, because the situation is very complex, and we already with you, repeatedly saying that they are focused and placing a very big bet, specifically on the distributary. That is, they have pulled up forces unnaturally, after reviewing the situation in the Siberian direction, came to the tactic that was still in the year 2023 during the Churika Wagner offensive when on their part, which is in principle logical. Destin tiempo zătărzămeite. There were reports that we need to go to Seversk by rail, that is by Sashkuto, Doguto, Parbolokuten, the height, that is Rozdolovka, Fyodorovka, Pereyazdanoy. The Russian side, of course, since that period has tried to address the situation change, but without applying tactics. Along the railway it's tricky, but overall it didn't bring them significant changes except for a fun capture. Cheerful significantly did not affect the situation, but the main focus now is towards the ravine, hence active fighting continues in the area. This does not mean that we do not have positionality in the remaining Sever direction, near Belogorovka, and along the railway towards. There is also excavation activity quite high, especially near Belagorivka towards the Chalk Quarry, and further attempts along the railway to break through. The fighting continues, hour by hour. As of today, we do not record significant changes, neither in the Kanal micro-district nor in the Kalinovka district. Our main focus remains the same. To Kalinovka, towards the Pokrovsky direction. We will start with the direction of the first Novoselivka. We will just look at it because there is a lot of conflicting information right now. Let's talk about this directly. So, the first moment from Umansky. We mentioned that there are attacks in the northern direction, in Donbas, roads. That is the northern beams by Baki. We talked about this with you to clarify the section. Red and gray zone. The main focus is on it now, and after the advance under Novopokrovsky accordingly, the enemy. Although there are attacks now in the direction. Abandoned gardens, but the situation looks like with the previous advances of the Pokrovsky direction, when it tries to break through, let's say, to the T-shaped intersection, from the south, from the north, from the northeast. Then a strike from Uman to the north, adjusted to the gray zone as you noticed anyway. It means he will try to close it. The speech is already based on the position, which are near Novopokrovsky. Therefore, the situation in the direction of the first Novosilovka remains difficult. The enemy continues to attack. Moving on to the Urakovsky direction, Krasnogorovka. In Krasnogorovka, there are further disadvantages. Apartment blocks, but this is already a micro-district in our Sani district. That is the very same multi-story buildings which pose the greatest challenge for Russian forces. The biggest obstacle overall is in Krasnohorivka. There were many attempts, as you remember, along Nakhimova Street to break through to the central hospital in order to later bypass these positions. There were attempts, we had quite a lot of them indeed, to the west of this micro-district, Sani Provica, in a northerly direction, i.e. the plan was extremely clear. But as in the case with other directions, we have to storm head-on, as in the case of Chasovya Yar, the canal neighborhood, when it was a bit difficult to get around, but still, and urban combat type is classic rifle fights, not allowing at the tactical level precisely what protrusions form in the Pokrovsky direction. In other directions, filter. No, mostly everything is head-on, but in any case the enemy occupied several houses, the Solnechny and Zavod districts. Below it there's also high-rise buildings. Naturally these are not our best news, because in any case this was very much a significant, substantial obstacle to further advancement in the eastern part, where they were indeed stopped, and we observed for more than several weeks positionality parity on the battlefield, meaning there were many attacks but no changes. In the end, they managed to take it and naturally further progress through the micro-district to the north and west of it. Yes, it actually leads them to that very central hospital. As they predicted, initially only bypassing the area, it's clear that part of the development, it will soon be unsafe to stay, because if we consider the long term, the most pessimistic scenario, but in any case, we stated that the enemy is still focused on Centra Hospital, close the protrusion if it forms, but so far it's going frontal, and we have a similar situation in the western part. Active assault actions continue, but now in the private sector, in the northern direction.
along at least, attacks the enemy on 3 streets. We do not observe significant changes overall, we have noted in recent days. Only such small advances, but that's where the enemy has entrenched according to those frames, which we have already seen. Therefore, the situation remains quite difficult in Krasnohorivka for us if we are talking in Sredizemnomorsk. Urgent segment, because the enemy is putting pressure, not that they have deployed large forces like in other areas, but still, he continues the assault actions. Our situation is not quite the same as it was in Marinka. In Marinka, it was more manageable. In fact, holding positions from Krasnohorivka for more than 1.5 years, let's say the situation is much more dangerous today, despite the fact that Krasnogorovka was indeed prepared for defense.